There you go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
There you
Perfectly.
go.
Perfectly.
Perfect. Okay.
Your
All
prior
right. So
question. Okay, go ahead.
let me say, as before, we discussed that, the new norm is something's totally different is going to happen.
Mhm.
I'm trying to get to the level of us here in the homes that are not on the front. Many people have received CERB. The government has given out.
Federal government, yes.
Right? On a provincial level, what is the tax pitfall here? And
So,
can Ontarians expect to be taxed heavy?
well, here's what I can say. Is what Ontario needs is a plan, right? So we have the federal government that has put forth CERB, the emergency response, funding.
Funding.
What I've heard about CERB,
Mm-hmm.
especially with regards to renters, to small business owners, all of the federal plans that are out there, they're not exactly supporting commercial renters, for instance. They're not exactly getting directly into the hands of those who need it most. So, for instance, one of the small business loans that the federal government, or the plan that they have, landlords have to opt into this plan, right?
Okay.
And by opting in, landlords are also losing money. So what we're hearing is landlords are not opting in. So I say all of that to say this. Ontario needs to create its own plans to support Ontarians, and we need those plans now.
Mm-hmm.
We, as the NDP, I feel like weeks ago, for goodness sakes, we proposed a rent subsidy plan. We said to the Doug Ford government, listen, folks are struggling. Many people are being laid off. Many people are becoming unemployed. They're losing their jobs. Rent is coming up. April 1st is coming up. May 1st is coming up. What's the plan, Doug Ford? What's the plan? We gave them a plan. And that plan was an 80% rent subsidy. We said to the government, let's create a plan where Ontarians who are struggling because of COVID-19 can get up to $2,500 a month to help with their rent. Let's freeze rent. No rent increases for several months so folks can get on their feet.
This was the NDP plan? This was the NDP plan?
And as you know, it's been crickets. I know people are still getting eviction notices. Even though the government has said that there's a moratorium on evictions, understand that there is no legislation. There is no legislation. I wish I had a piece of legislation to show you exactly what it looks like. Mm-hmm. There is no legislation that says, that rent cannot be increased. There's no legislation that says, let's put a freeze on rent. There's no basic income, for goodness sakes. The NDP proposed a $2,000 a month emergency income to help get folks through the next little while. That hasn't happened. So while the Premier stands on TV and says, Ontario is working together, I'm so glad and proud of the federal government and we're working together. My thing is this. People are dying. People are experiencing grief and loss, not just physically, but emotionally. Isn't this the time to put the party politics aside and listen? Take a page from your official opposition.
But listen, Ms. Andrew, are the government listening to people in the homes, on the streets, working? I mean, I don't hear, if I didn't reach out, none of these reach out to us here on the streets. It seems like decisions are being made and they're not being passed with the people who are struggling in mind. That's what it seems like to me.
Well, I would have to agree with you on many levels. The Ontario government has had a chronic issue with consultation. Decisions are made, bills are made, cuts to education, cuts to healthcare, you know, extended drama on the Eglinton Crosstown that has made so many of our small businesses shut down.
That's never going to finish. That's never going to finish. I've been seeing that construction for decades now. That's never going to finish. I don't know why, but whatever.
Decisions are being made, and they're not being made, you know, listening to people who are most vulnerable, who are most marginalized. And that is why we're fighting so hard for a rent subsidy. This is why we're fighting for race-based data. This is why we're fighting to have an anti-racism directorate that's fully funded, you know?
Yeah.
That is why we're fighting for these things.
I'm a little bit confused. I'm a little bit confused because people are going to come out of COVID-19 with no job. Like, places are going to shut down. This is the norm that's going to happen. So what is, okay, you know what? Let me put it on you. What is your government's plan to address the issues of people who are now going to be jobless coming out of this situation?
Well, let me tell you this. So one of the first things, homelessness. We have a homelessness crisis in this province. You know, we have asked for that to be declared an emergency, for homelessness to be declared an emergency so we can focus on building more supportive housing, on building more affordable housing, on getting people housed. You know, nothing else happens. Nothing else works, Wiz, if you don't have a pillow to rest your head on, right? Mm-hmm. There are many Ontarians that don't have a pillow to rest their head on. You know, we have been advocating for, you know, not only jobs, but careers. You know, let's get more funding into our post-secondary institutions. Let's get more funding into our training programs for young people so that when they come out of school, when they come out of apprenticeships, they have jobs to go to. They have the confidence they need to apply and know that they are ready to take that next step into their adult lives. You know, we are consistently, whether it's for jobs, whether it's around housing, whether it's around better health care, whether we're demanding less cuts to education, we are consistently sounding the alarms of the legislature. You know, I personally tell folks, call your MPPs. You know, a lot of folks don't know who their MPP is or have never reached out to their MPP. Call your member of provincial parliament. Call your city councillor. Email them. Write them about what your concerns are, because that's how people's voice get into Queen's Park. Come to Queen's Park. Sit in the chambers. I mean, that may not be happening, you know, with physical distancing, but you know, generally speaking, it's about getting engaged.
Honestly, like I'm not going to say you, but I'm going to say some. I've heard this before. Call your MPP. Get in touch with the MPP. And you call, you leave messages. I've done it personally. I'm lucky. I've gotten through where I've gotten the help from my MPP. I really have, so I can't deny that. But I've heard the stories of they called, they've left messages, no return call, no return email. I know you can't speak of others, but it's the norm across a lot of the government. Is there a way to filter through that? Is there a way to say, yo, who do we, after we go to our MPP and we don't get that response, where do we go? Who do we talk to? Where hands are tied? What is happening? How do we get to our government? Like, we're here on the front line suffering as well, not as bad as some of those workers. But we need, as regular people, our government is making decisions, saying things, doing things, and some of it is not making any sense. When do we, it's hard to trust.
Right. No, I can completely understand that frustration. You know, before I got into politics, you know, there are politicians that you reached out to, you know, they smiled for you at the cameras, and then you never saw them again. Right. When I got into politics, I promised myself, I made a promise to community that this was not how I was going to roll. And albeit politicians' days are filled with hundreds, sometimes thousands, according to what the topic of the day might be, emails, it is a responsibility when you're given the privilege of sitting on one of those seats in the legislature, it's your responsibility to be responsive to your community. So I always encourage folks, whether you're writing to your government, whether you're emailing your government, whether you're protesting your government, you know, people are able to engage in peaceful protest right on the lawns of Queen's Park. And certainly that cannot happen right now, right?
No,
but there are many channels. There are many channels, because I get that you're saying that there's a frustration, you know, however, we have to fill up.
I don't mean to cut you off or be rude, but our protests, especially with us, and you understand the culture, our protests usually lead to jail. Usually. Whether, even if it's peaceful, it gets to be a very, how could I say, aggressive tones back and forth with the laws of authority and thing. So I don't know what's left, what's there to work. I get what you're saying, and what you're saying is correct. The norm of it all, though, is if I go stand on Queen's Park and protest, the words of, if you don't get out of here or you'll be arrested, come to my very attention immediately, right away.
So let me be very frank with you on that. While I have been a politician, I have personally coordinated school visits, youth visits, organization visits, many of whom have been Black and racialized. As a Black MPP, it is my duty to ensure that as many Black folks as possible can visit Queen's Park. And I don't mean visit to look around on the pictures. I mean visit to come and talk to me and talk about the topics that are important, and meet other MPPs. Meet my colleagues within the NDP Black Caucus, for instance. If you apply and you are granted your permit to be on that lawn, you have that right to be there. As we say in the legislature, this is your house. So I just want to spend a little time. I know that it can be very frustrating not getting your MPP, but you have to keep pressing them. And I'm not against telling you as well, if you can't find your MPP, go on social media. That is a tool that we now have. I have seen the government get pushed into a corner because of grassroots organizing, because of social media campaigns. Frankly, a little public shaming can go a long way, whether we're talking about autism, whether we're talking about disability rights, whether we're talking about, you know, the fact that we need to get racial profiling off the books. Like I can't say this enough. When we ran in the summer of 2018, or I should say spring of 2018, you know, Andrea Horwath, the leader of the official opposition NDP party, was the only leader running for premier who said if she was elected, she would get rid of racial profiling. She would get rid of carding. She was the only one. So when elections come along, we have to listen to who is saying what. And a lot of times you have to listen for what people are not saying, because that even gives you more insight to what they're saying. So, you know, I mean, we're talking about a lot of things here. You know, bringing it back to COVID-19, which I know is on everyone's mind. You know, what we need is a province that works for people, not corporations, not the big wig CEOs. We need a province that works for people first, at least, right? Okay. So that people can take care of their basic needs, so they can pay their rent, so they can pay their mortgage. And this is why this provincial federal plan for small businesses, you know, we're consistently hearing that it has failed many small businesses because many landlords are not opting in. So what we need a provincial government. We need a premier who says, forget about landlords having to opt in. We're going to ensure that our small businesses are taken care of as the provincial government. We're going to offer Ontarians a basic income. We're going to freeze rent. We're going to do actual things to support them.
I understand that. I understand that. Right now it's defer of like a 2 months or 3 months.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, people still owe that rent money. They still owe it. So what's going to happen when 3 or 4 months down the road and this landlord say, okay, I want like 10 grand right now or whatever? Are they been able to kick out people? Is that what's taking place now?
Well, you know what? I don't have a magic ball, so I can't necessarily see into the future. But what I can say is we have predicted this, and this is why we are asking, we're demanding that the government legislate a rent subsidy for both our residential renters and also for our commercial renters. We have to help everyone out here. You know, it's not enough to only be thinking about, you know, corporate buddies, you know, real estate buddies. This is not where we're at right now. We have to help the folks that are just trying to get by, you know, who are significantly struggling. You know, I'm certainly hearing from small business owners. You know, I'm hearing from small business owners, you know, in the Yonge and Eglinton area. I'm hearing from small business owners, you know, in Little Jamaica. Well, people are not jumping on board on this plan to have landlords.
Miss Andrew, for my thing is that's small business owners. What about just the regular homeowner, the regular people that are owning homes or paying mortgages or whatever? What about them? That's good for the small business owners. I get it. But what about the regular people that are living in their homes day to day, that go out, they work 9 to 5, come home, they have $1,800, $2,200 to pay. Then they got to find groceries. Then they got to do this. Then they got to pay this bill and that bill. What about them?
So so you can read my lips in saying that this Ontario government has forgotten about those people. They have forgotten about those people, because if they were thinking about those people from the minute this COVID-19 became the pandemic, the lived reality that it is for all of us, there would have been rent supports. There would have been supports for the little person with the mortgage, right? We would have seen this happening, and we're not. We would have seen hazard pay happen immediately. You know, if you look at the PSWs, Wiz, if you look at people that are on these essential worker, you know, front lines, they look like me and you. A lot of them are racialized. Many of them are women. My mother's one of them. Right?
Yeah.
So where was the government in mid-March when April 1st's rent was coming up? Where was the government?
My thing is this. You got down to the cashiers at the grocery store. You got cashiers at maybe a Money Mart or a Western Union or what. If they're out there, their company is not caring much about them. They're putting them back to work. They're keeping them to work. So why is their pay not increased just as well as somebody else who's up in the office doing whatever in the office that's running to get a paper? These are hard people that are working as well. They're the grocery store clerks. They're whatever mom and pop shop that has to deliver food and stuff. Where is their increase? Is the government that we have now is not looking towards these little people. And this is upsets me.
Wiz, I agree with you. You know what I would challenge? I would love to see you get an opportunity to ask these very pointed questions, these excellent questions of yours, to Premier Doug Ford. Because I got to tell you, the buck stops there. He is the Premier. He is the Premier. And we have to ask ourselves as a society, what do we think about our essential workers? What do we really think about them? Because everyone's talking now, healthcare hero, healthcare hero, healthcare hero, right?
Yeah.
But again,
what about them?
Our healthcare system has been chronically underfunded for years. For years.
Would I get that opportunity? Would I get that opportunity to stand in front of Doug Ford?
Can I tell you something? There's no reason that as a respectable media personality that you can't reach out to Doug Ford's communications folk and request an interview. There's absolutely no reason that that can't happen because he is the Premier of Ontario. And he should be listening to everyone.
If Andrea was the Premier, would she give me the time of day?
She sure would. She sure would. She'd give you the time of day now as the leader of the official opposition.
I'm going to keep you to that. We'll talk about that a little bit later, though, 100%. You know what I want to ask you, Miss Andrew? Have you or can you tell us, is there any little grumbling? We lost Caravana. We're losing most of these, you know, the clubs and the scenery and all that. Is there any more cultural effects that you see clearly going down the drain due to the social distancing, to the pandemic? What's going to happen? Is that it? Is that it for 2020?
Let me say this. I mean, obviously, we're following the public health officials' direction. And yes, you're very right. You know, our hearts dropped. Many of us certainly felt a special sting when we heard that Caravana was going for this year. There have been many festivals, concerts. Toronto is projecting a loss of 500 million, north of 500 million, up to June alone in terms of event, you know, ticket sales. Concerts are closed down, this, that, and the other. Jobs lost, right? You know, culture has been hit. Live entertainment industry, performing arts, theaters have been hit. You know, the folks that are working behind the scenes, you know, I want to give a shout out to IATSE, you know, people that are working behind the scenes have been grossly hit. So again, what we need is a provincial plan with provincial dollars that go directly to Ontarians in need. Quite frankly, I'm not a federal politician. So it's all good and dandy to hear that the federal government is doing A, B, or C, right? But what's my Premier doing for me in Ontario? What's our Premier doing for us in Ontario? You know, when I talk to local theaters, local cultural workers, local poets, the artists who had to cancel all their gigs, the photographer who had to cancel all their gigs, they're asking me, Jill, where's the COVID relief fund for artists? You know, there have been so many organizations that have stepped up through philanthropy to support artists. But as I've always said, Wiz, philanthropy cannot replace the government's role for funding and policy. It can't. Okay. So if the government does not, you know, expose its cultural plan, its COVID-19 not only response but recovery plan for our arts and culture sector, we are absolutely in trouble.
Okay.
We are in trouble because it's not only entertainment. This is livelihood. These are jobs. These are families. You know what I mean? We have to help people. You know, so as official opposition, we are putting forth proposal after proposal. I've written to the Minister of Heritage, Tourism, Culture, Sport. I've written to my ministers, you know, responsible for women's issues. We have written to ministers of housing. Our entire party, as official opposition, you know, we're having conversations or trying to with government, but they need to listen to our proposals. If they are truly talking about Ontarians' health and safety and wellness, then they need to strike up our all-party, you know, economic recovery committee, for goodness sakes. Let's have all people come together. Let's put aside the partisanship and focus on rebuilding Ontario in a way that no one is left behind.
You know, you say that, and I respect that. I'm going to wrap up soon enough. I know I've taken a lot of your time. I appreciate you. Just one or two more questions. You know, coming out of COVID, with the government trying to open up the economy and stuff like that, there's going to be a lot of people scared to go back to work.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Are they going to be in a position where their job is going to force them? Is there going to be any safety from our government to say you cannot force people to come back or do this or do that? Is there any form of leverage that we're going to have in saying, you know, well, okay, can we wear a mask? And your job's going to tell you don't wear a mask because it doesn't look socially acceptable or whatever. Hell no. Like, come on.
I hear what you're saying. There's a lot of anxiety about, you know, reopening and what that will look like, and you know, for goodness sakes, you know, how will we get to work? How does the person get to work who's got 4 buses to take? Will it be safe? You know, will they have to wear masks? Will they not? But you know, again, I'm putting trust in our public health officials to influence what those employment practices will look like, what educational practices will look like as we venture back into society. That is what I'm doing. You know, in terms of my work with the official opposition and us tackling the government, what we're saying is make sure our testing numbers are up. You know, Doug Ford has systematically not met his testing targets. He has not met his testing targets. And what he does is he lowers the testing number, and then he still doesn't meet the target, right? So at the end of the day, if we don't have a full picture on testing, people's anxiety is rightfully placed. We cannot open an economy fully without knowing exactly what we're dealing with.
I can highly let you know now that if we listen, okay, that's fine. We listen to our public, because I feel like we're in Canada. We have the best set of people to, you know, see what is going on with this pandemic. And I think our government, you know, some parts of our government are really great. Like, I'm Canadian born, so I'm all for Canada. Really love how we do some things, some part of our government. But I can tell you, from a community perspective, you're going to get into, I don't know if the government across the board is prepared for this. You as a person, maybe, because, you know, you're genuine here with us now, and we understand that there's places that you have to be where you have to listen to certain things, or we're hoping, you know what I mean? It is what it is. But there could be a community uproar of you telling me that I have to do this or I have to take that. And is the government prepared for something like that? Because I don't think you could force anybody to do what they don't want to do.
Well,
put it out there.
Well, here's my thing. June 1st is going to come sooner than we think.
Yes.
And I am looking to the government to see if they're going to finally open their eyes and legislate rent subsidies, legislate a basic income to help Ontarians get by, right? Legislate for everyday people, you know, instead of, you know, our provincial government clawing back money from disabled people.
Yeah.
Come on. You can't take the little dollars from disabled Ontarians that they're getting simply because they also got CERB or whatever the case is. You can't do that. You can't do that. You know, we need a government to step up and have his own plan, have his own vision. Give people direct support now. They need support now. Like today is May 8th. Today is May 8th. Where is the basic income? Where is the rent subsidy? Where is the 75% commercial rent subsidy for small business owners? You know, my riding, Toronto St. Paul's, we are littered with restaurants and small businesses. Where is the PPE? Where are the protective masks and gowns and gloves for our frontline workers? You know, for my aunts, for my godmother. You know what I mean? Yeah. Where are they? Where are they? These are not things that Ontarians should have to ask for. We need more affordable housing. We need housing. You know, so, you know, very early on in the interview, you said, well, you know, what about the future, right? I am sincerely hoping that Doug Ford has recognized, he has said it. He said that long-term care homes are broken, right? He needs to fix them. He also needs to fix our schools, right? A lot of parents are anxious. I'm getting calls and emails all the time about our schools. What's happening with our kids? You know, what's happening with our educators and our education workers? Doug Ford needs to fix our schools so that kids can return whenever they're able to, in buildings that are healthy. You know, as official opposition, we have asked for a stabilization fund for ethnic media. Because you know and I know, ethnic media, our local media, our multilingual producers, they are the ones, Wiz, who your mom and my mom listen to.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Vibe 105. Vibe 105.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So at the end of the day, when ethnic media is not benefiting, and that's what I'm hearing from them, when ethnic media is not benefiting from the federal advertising campaign money that's being released, then it's up to our Ontario province to say, you know what, we value our ethnic media partners. We're going to support them with advertising revenue and supports so that they can tell the story of COVID-19 to the 250 plus ethnic communities that make up Canada.
100. You know, I'm just going to end it like this. If you know outside, if you were in charge, what is a post-COVID looking entry into the world looking for you?
Oh man, that is a big question. You know, for me, a post-COVID society in Ontario would have a rent freeze. Folks would have access to income to help them get by. There would be speedy recovery on jobs.
When you say rent free, when you say rent freeze, does that mean, okay, you don't have to pay rent this month and we're not deferring it? It's done? Like let
me tell you. Yeah, deferrals and loans, those two words, deferrals and loans, are no good right now.
Okay. You heard it there for yourself, people. Deferrals and loans are not good.
They're not good right now.
Okay.
Not right now. People need help now. And as you said earlier, Wiz, not help that they're going to lose sleep taking because they're going to owe $20, $30, $40, or $10,000 down the line. That isn't help. That isn't help. That's a smokescreen.
All right. So,
listen. But yeah, we need an Ontario where no one's left behind, Wiz. And I'm telling you, a lot of folks were left behind before COVID-19. A lot of folks have been left behind during COVID-19. And if Doug Ford and his conservative government do not listen to community, listen to health experts, listen to us as official opposition, many of whom are made up of working folks. I was an educator and an education worker, a child and youth worker before I came here. Listen to real people who have real solutions. And let's get away from the ego. It can't all be Doug Ford.
Been saying that. Listen, we are talking to MPP Jill Andrew. You have been absolutely fabulous. I really appreciate you. One thing I should let everybody know is that you didn't take any questions before. You didn't you didn't do this so you could secure any answers. You answered, came right on the spot. Something I respect from you, 100, because that's not easy to do, to come on a platform of this level, not knowing. I've never met her before. Seems like a great lady. She checked me out, I'm sure of it, and said, okay, yeah, I'll do it. You've come down off the big plateau to come on our plateau, you know what I mean? So
no plateaus, folks.
But you know, I really thank you. Really appreciate you.
Thank you.
I've heard you. You know what I mean? And I'm hoping one day to meet you in person through all of this, and maybe we can talk to Andrea and, you know, get this all moving and bumping, and let's put our heads together. And I'm not a fan of what's going on some aspects of some things. So, you know, but of course I have to
reach out, Wiz. Reach out. Our leader is so accessible. You know, our leader has been having, you know, coffee, kitchen table, virtual conversations, you know, with everyday folks who are struggling with rent, who are struggling, you know, who are losing folks in long-term care, you know, parents who are worried about education. She's always there. You know, I call her, I email her, she responds. It's not some person in the sky who doesn't connect.
I appreciate. Maybe you could put in a good word for me. Maybe you could put in a good word for me.
I sure will. As soon as this is done, I will do that.
I appreciate you. Thank you so very much for coming on this platform. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. And stay safe, stay home. All right, you know, social distancing as best you can.
Take good care. You too. You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, so there you have it.